Hello YouTube, and welcome to another couch vlog coming at you from beautiful Sterling, Virginia, where it is cloudy, gray, and hot as heck. My God, I rode this morning and I just almost got sunburn, heat exhaustion. I mean, look at my face. It was too much. It was way too much. And as tradition, I have something to drink. This time it's a non-alcoholic coffee, which is nice and cool. Ah, yeah, that's good. You can see the lack of wincing on my face. I'm fresh out of beer, fresh out of liquor, but I am a little drunk. Can't complain. It's a beautiful Saturday, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful day as well. So what's today's topic? Well, from the video title, I hope you can understand what it is. And that is ego. This is a pretty serious topic, guys, but I hope to keep it light. I hope to keep it fairly short, and I hope to entertain you a little bit while this is going on. So I'm going to start out by saying what do I think ego is, because ego has a complex definition depending on where you look in the field of study you look in. You're going to get different definitions, and you're going to get different interpretations of what a person's ego is. So the ego is something that exists within the self, right? Every person has an ego. And what is the ego? What is the ego and what does it do? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it something you want to fight against? Is it something you want to embrace? What's going on? And that's a hard question to answer. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a philosopher. I'm a bloody engineer who likes to ride motorcycles, okay? So take everything I say here from beyond now with a little bit of a grain of salt, but do what I want to incite maybe is a discussion with you and your ego. That's what I want to incite, okay? So what is an ego? An ego is something that exists within you, and me, and everyone else, and that what the ego does is it allows us to project our own internal identity within our conscious and unconscious minds. So that's a strange definition, right? The upshot to this is the ego is what allows you to have a sense of self, to have a sense of self-identity, to have a sense of self-worth, to have a self-loathing, to have a sense of self in general. So is this good or bad? Well, I hate to say it, but in general, your ego is going to cause more problems than it solves. It makes us human beings, right? It's what separates us, in a sense, from the animals. Sort of, beyond writing and, mathematics and engineering and all, and history and, art, etc. I could go on like that forever, but the ego is what allows us to exist within our own minds. It allows us to persist a state of self-worth within ourselves. Holy crap, I'm just going and saying crazy things, right? But think about it. How do you view yourself? I think everyone can answer that. You view yourself, in this way and that way, and I like this about myself, and I don't like this about myself, and I love these traits about myself, and I wish I could change these other traits about myself. And I could go on ad nauseum here. So your ego is what really defines you internally as a person. So the main takeaway I'm going to give you here is that your ego and your actual identity as a human being are two different things. Your ego is your internal identity, and your identity is your external identity. So you got your ego and your identity. They're internal and external. Yeah, pretty easy, right? The hard part about this is that your ego and your identity are often conflicting with each other. Because the more positively you view yourself through your ego, the more negatively you tend to be viewed through your actual external identity. Now that sounds strange, but it's true because people really don't like show-offs, and people want to feel like they are at the very least equal to you, if not superior to you. So that's strange, right? People want to feel as though they are either equal to you or superior to you. When you come across as someone who is superior, then what ends up happening is you get looked upon with disdain by those around you. So the bigger your ego, so to speak, the smaller your actual identity becomes. Now, I'm going to say right now, I'm not calling anyone out. I'm not calling any group of people out. I'm not doing anything. I'm just sharing my opinion on what your ego is and how it relates to your sense of internal and external self. Okay? If you're watching this and you feel offended, well, that's on you, because I am not calling you out. I am not calling you out. So, let's be honest with ourselves. Myself, I've got a pretty big ego. I view myself as a pretty smart person, as someone who is able to teach others various things, as someone who maybe other people should look up to in various ways. Am I perfect? No, I'm far from perfect. There are tons of things that I do that are hypocritical, that are wrong, that are things that others should not look up to. But at the same time, I think there are more things about myself that are positive, that are good, that are things that people should look up to. Okay? I try to be a nice person. I try to be a positive person. I try to be an outgoing and real person where I wear my emotions on my sleeve, but at the same time, I try to make those emotions positive. So that's making my ego big. Look at me talking myself up. You're probably thinking, what a jackass I am for saying this stuff. And that's exactly the point I'm trying to prove here. Strangely enough, if I were to talk myself down and say I'm bad at this, bad at that, bad at everything, you think, what a loser, right? I'm better than that guy. So you look at me with like pity, with like soft eyes, right? You look at me as like a weakling. Now, strangely enough, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Do I want to be looked upon as an arrogant person, or do I want to be looked upon as someone who's weak? Well, let's be honest. The answer's somewhere in the middle, right? You don't want to be all the way up here as some jackass, arrogant person, and you also don't want to be down here looked upon as, easy pickings for everyone else. So you have to decide how much you let your ego control your sense of external identity, and that's a very difficult thing to do. But if you've never heard this concept, if you've never heard this before, this is certainly something you should think about. It's another way to approach life, and it's fun, it's interesting. I hope it's fun for you, because if defining yourself, if thinking about philosophy, if thinking about religion, if thinking about yourself and how you feel about yourself and how you are viewed by others, and how that dichotomy exists. If you can't think about things like this and have a little fun, then I will take my ego and I will say I feel a little bit sorry for you. Okay? Lighten up. We're only here for a short amount of time. And we should have a little bit of fun with reality and with spirituality while we're here. So goddamn, holy crap, what the hell? How does this all relate to motorcycle riding, right? Well, if you haven't figured that out yet, maybe I want to give you a pause. I want you to think about it. How does your ego, i.e. your internal sense of self, and your external sense of self, how do those two things relate to motorcycle riding? I want you to come up with your own definition, your own ideas. And I'm going to sit here for a few seconds while you think about it. probably long enough. I don't want to sit here for like a minute. Anyways, your ego is either your greatest ally or your biggest enemy when it comes to motorcycle riding, because it is what allows you to improve or hinders your improvement, okay? If you let your ego run your life from a motorcycling perspective, i.e., if you let your internal sense of self run your motorcycling, you're going to have a very bad time, because motorcycling is not about feelings. Motorcycling is not about how big or small you feel inside. Motorcycling is a cold, hard set of physical laws. Now, can we describe all these laws with simple equations? Can we solve all these equations analytically? No. Holy crap. Motorcycling is extremely complicated, and to be honest, science can only explain so much. But one thing science can say, and one thing philosophy can say, is that your sense of self-worth has very little to do with whether or not you're going to crash a motorcycle, okay? So please, keep that in mind. Your sense of self-worth has very little to do with whether or not you are going to crash a motorcycle. That is something that is worth repeating. What determines if you're going to crash a motorcycle? It's your external self. It's your hands. It's the way you move the grips on your motorcycle. It's the way you twist the throttle. It's the way you apply the brakes. It's where you put your head. It's where you put your eyes. It's how you use your feet. It's how you utilize your core. It's how you move around on the seat. It's all these different things, depending on what you're doing, that determines whether or not you're going to crash a motorcycle. Whether or not you're going to go out there and have a great time, or whether or not you're going to go out there and crash. Now, I've been a bit disingenuous here. Whether or not you're going to go out there and have a great time is actually based almost purely on your self-worth, right? You could go out there, ride amazing roads perfectly, in great weather, with people you love, come home completely safe, and still have a bad time because your sense of self-worth is all messed up, within your mind. I'm not saying it's messed up from my perspective, but you do all these things and you feel bad. Well, guess what? Your ego is probably the cause. So, and also, whether or not you make the right actions on that motorcycle, whether you push the bar right to go right when you need to, push that bar left to go left when you need to, hit the brakes at the right time, hit the throttle at the right time. Please don't hit the throttle or the brakes. Oh my God. Whether or not you apply the brakes at the right time, whether or not you roll on the throttle at the right time, whether you use the clutch correctly, whether you decide to do a big tank wheelie, or whether you decide to do a small wheelie, or whether you decide to do no wheelies, whether you decide to do this, that, and the other, a lot of that has to do with your ego. So I'm kind of talking around in circles, am I not? I'm saying that your ego doesn't mean anything, and I'm also saying that your ego means everything. Isn't that a strange concept? Your inner sense of self is what determines your outer actions. So what can I suggest? Well, the first thing is, recognize what's going on. Recognize when you should and shouldn't ride, okay? When your ego is taken over, when your sense of self-worth becomes the most important thing in your mind, maybe that's not the best time to ride a motorcycle. You're going to be distracted. You're going to be focusing inward, not outward. You're not going to be in the moment. You're not going to be reading the moment. You're not going to be able to have, again, correct inputs on the bars, correct throttle control, correct braking control, etc. You're just not. And when that happens, you're a danger to yourself, and you're honestly a danger to the people around you. But when, say, you can reduce your sense of self-worth, you can tell yourself that, hey, the way I feel isn't that important. But you know what is important? The things that I actually am doing in the moment. The things that I'm actually doing in the moment. That's what's important. When that happens, that's when you want to go out and ride. That's when you're going to have your best time. You're in the zone. Okay? So please keep that in mind. The other thing I want to keep in mind is that no one's ego exists in an island, and no one's riding exists in an island. Obviously, if you crash and die because of another driver, that's not good, right? But if you cause another driver to kill you because of your own riding, that's bad too, right? Imagine, a teenager, a 17-year-old teenager. They've been taught to kind of creep out into the intersection, and then when the light turns yellow and everything's clear, make a left, okay? Everything's good, right? They're looking down the road, they creep out into the intersection, the light turns yellow, and what they see is a big truck. Now, I'm taking this from another channel called MC Rider, but this scenario is very true. Let's say, again, you're creeping out into the intersection, you're going to make a left, and what you see is a big truck. And the light turns yellow, and you see that truck slowing down, and it is obvious that truck is going to come to a stop. So you start going. Everything's good, and then the next second, bam! The loudest noise you've ever heard just happens. And you look over to your right, and there's a friggin' motorcyclist like sticking out of your car. They're not responsive. They look all jacked up. You stop the car. You get out of the car. You look around. The motorcyclist is now on the ground. They're bleeding everywhere. You try to get them to respond, but they're already dead. How bad is that going to mess you up? And is that your fault? No. You looked. You did everything right, but the motorcyclist decided to obscure themselves behind a truck and blow through a yellow light at top speed right into the side of your car. Well, two things. One, legally, you are at fault. You crossed into that motorcyclist's path, and you are screwed from a legal perspective. You're going to get sued. You're going to get tickets. Your insurance is going to go up. You might get dropped. All this bad stuff is going to happen to you, and you didn't do anything wrong. The second thing is you're going to have nightmares. If you're a normal person, you're going to reenact this scene over and over and over and over and over again in your mind. And what does this have to do with ego? It doesn't have much to do with ego, but it has to do with the fact that your riding is not on an island. If you do some crazy nonsense maneuver, even if you're right, even if you are legally and morally and everything right, you can still cause extreme trauma in the mind of another human being. You're taking your sense of self-worth and you're imparting it into that other person. Your spirit has now entered that other person physically because of the actions that you have taken. So please be aware that nothing you do is in an island. The second reason you're not on an island as a rider is because your actions as a rider are going to influence the actions of other riders. When you're in a group ride, or whether you maybe you're in a group ride or whether you pass another rider, they're going to see you, and they're going to want to, in a sense, learn from you, be around you, go with you. Or maybe they're not going to go with you. Maybe they're going to disdain you. But either way, your actions are going to get into that other person's head. Your spirit is going to enter that other person physically. And your riding is now affecting the riding of others in some way or another. It's influencing their ego. It's influencing their sense of external self. It's just anything. You just don't know how you are going to actually influence another person because it's a very complicated and chaotic topic. So I know I'm getting a little heated about this, but guys, I hope you're having a little bit of fun. I'm trying to make these arm motions because while this is a very serious topic, it is also kind of a fun topic because it's a branch of science or philosophy or logic or whatever you want to call it, religion, that is not that well defined. It's something that everyone has to define for themselves. So I implore you to give a little bit of thought today or tomorrow. Let's say right now. Because you know what, you're watching YouTube. You've got to be a little bored. Give a little thought to the dichotomy between your inner self, your ego, and your external self, your actual identity. How do you view yourself versus how do you think people view you? Versus, guess what? Maybe go out and ask, hey, do you think I act like this? Do you think I am like this? You know, that kind of thing. Huh. That's actually a great way to let your ego kind of drop down the hierarchy a little bit. Go out and ask somebody, hey, how do you actually feel about me? Am I a nice guy? Am I a bad person? What do I do right? What do I do wrong? And when they tell you and it's an answer you don't want to hear, maybe consider thinking about changing yourself just a little bit. You know, and that's a tough question. People are not going to want to answer that question. So it's got to be accompanied, I hate to say it, with copious amounts of alcohol. Okay? Because people aren't going to open up about what they don't like about you when they're sober. They just aren't, unless, you know, they're special, awesome people. So anyways, guys, I hope you had a little fun listening to this. I hope you're going to have a little bit of fun thinking about yourself. Because it's something that, you know, everyone has. And it's something that can totally affect your writing. Holy crap, it's stormy bad outside. Wow. But anyways, guys, think about your ego and think about your writing.